Well, thank you so much for being here and for contributing all of your community announcements. And this week's speaker is Jess Edberg, who's here from the Dorothy Molter Museum, who's passionate about history and is here to talk to us more about what you may not know about the Dorothy Molter Museum and her exciting time as History Happy Hour host. So, thank you, Jess.
Okay. Okay. Hello. I was telling a couple of people I'm a little bit more nervous to do this than I usually am for History Happy Hour. And I'm not sure why. It's a lot of the same people that go. I think I'm just not used to talking about myself and what I do. I talk about other stuff and what other people did. So yes, I am the executive director at the Dorothy Molter Museum. I've worked there for 12 years now, and there are a lot of things that we do that, there we go, that I think are pretty intuitive. People know, it kind of makes sense that we do. And then there's some things that we do that are kind of like, oh, I don't really get how that connects. So I'm going to tell you about it. So our mission is to preserve and interpret Northwoods wilderness heritage through learning opportunities inspired by Dorothy Molter's life. And if you're not familiar, she is the last non-Indigenous permanent resident of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And so the things that we do, I'll get this, and eventually by the end, I'll know which way I'm going. We're doing legacy work. So as we're a historic organization. We are dedicated to history. Apparently, this is just going on its own because I didn't change anything from the last time I used it. But our three main kind of pillars of what we do are historic interpretation, of course, related to Dorothy Molter and the Boundary Waters, collection preservation. So not just having the stuff and showing you the stuff, but also taking care of it and preserving it for the long term. And then audience engagement, combining those other two pillars with different opportunities to learn about Dorothy Molter and the stuff that we do at the museum. And so generally the basics, we do visitation. So right now we're open every day from 10 to 5 through Labor Day. And we have staff that do optional guided programs. So all of our exhibits are designed to go through self-guided, but we have hourly programs where you can dive in a little deeper to Dorothy Molter's history. We have a variety of exhibits from Dorothy's root beer, her passing. We have a video from the memorial service that was held up at Knife Lake for her. We also have exhibit scavenger hunts. We have an exhibit about just living in the wilderness off the grid. What does that mean? How do you do that? History of the Boundary Waters. And then of course, Dorothy's stuff, which if you've been there, there's a lot of it. We also have a 1/4 mile nature trail on site and a quiet area and sensory garden and tons of interpretive signage outside, both on the buildings and along the nature trails and public spaces. One of those spaces is a pollinator garden and bird feeding area, which I know several of you have been there, especially in the wintertime. We keep it full of bird food. It's one of Dorothy's hobbies that she participated in. And so we have a feeder wheel that we keep stocked up during the wintertime once the bears go to sleep. And it's open to anybody that wants to come and watch it any time of the year. Now we only have thistle because, you know, bears. We also have a curated gift shop. So our biggest revenue generator is the root beer. Second biggest is retail merchandise, not root beer, in our gift shop. Third would be admission. And those three streams of revenue are what support my job, the lights, hiring interns for the summer, and all the work that we do, including the History Happy Hour program. We also do host 3 different open houses throughout the summer and then others throughout the year for special events. Our first one of the season is June 28th. It's coming up in a few weeks on a Sunday. Free admission all day with special activities from 11 to 2. We also offer adventure trips. So we do a women's canoe trip up to Knife Lake. So next week, I'll be going into the Boundary Waters with my co-leader, Doris Kaloji, who you might know or have heard at the storytelling event a week or so ago. And then we also do a dog sled up to Dorothy's in late winter with Hauling Dogs LLC, which is owned by Sean McCurdy. So trying to get people into what Dorothy lived through and really kind of a full immersion history experience. And then we also do a lot of offsite programming. So not just the history happy hour, but going to schools or other historical societies or events we've been invited to go present at or teach how to make homemade root beer, doing webinars, doing Zooms. You know, anytime somebody asks us to go, we're going to go. We're going to do it. One of the initiatives that has become very important to the museum, but also personally, is our small museum management internship program. It started a little bit before COVID. It was brand new in 2018, 2019, and then COVID hit. We had to change everything, and then we revisited it in 2022. But this is the one initiative that we do that is really living inspiring the next generation of Northwoods stewards through Dorothy's inspirational story. And so these young people come to the museum. We provide paid hourly wage as well as housing. So we have had interns come from all over the country. I think the farthest was Texas. And they spend the summer with us learning hospitality, customer service, historic interpretation, but also small museum management. So we have little mini sessions about finance and membership, so that they get a taste of what the reality of working at a small museum or historical society really is, because the majority of us small museums operate very similarly, and it's a lot of work. So they kind of want to know what they're getting into. But we also have a lot of local partnerships and collaborations and sponsorships that we're a part of. So one of the big things we work with is Minnesota North Community College, Vermilion, BCC. We work with their forestry program. See, we'll get back. There we go. Keeping you on your toes. We work with their forestry program to manage the land that the museum sits on. So we do tree culling, we do prescribed burns, classes come out and use the forest there for field activities. We're part of the Ely Cultural Alliance, which is a group of arts and cultural organizations just working together to promote awareness for what we do and support each other. The Ely Folk School we partner with for root beer making classes that focus on a history aspect. So where did root beer come from and why do people like it so much? We're also a recent addition to the sponsor and partner group of the Ely Film Festival to bring in a little bit of local arts and culture history to that avenue. And I have a lot of fun doing it, so I really like it. Ely for Ely group, working with that. And I also offer services to help people plan for emergency response. So I'm part of an organization I'll get to on the next slide that wants to promote being prepared for a disaster at your organization. And this can apply to your own personal lives or your home as well. But talking about, do you have an emergency plan? Let's get you set up. Here's a template. How do you gather all the resources you might need? And the museum also is in possession of an emergency response kit. So if one of our friends and neighbor organizations in the area has some kind of disaster, we have tools that can be used immediately to deal with a water event, with a fire event, windstorm damage. So if you have questions about that, please let me know. And then the star is on there to remind me to talk about a new partnership with the soon to be Dirty Soda Shop coming to Ely that is going to occupy the former Pebble Spa. But I'm not sure how much information I'm supposed to talk about. So it's just a teaser. On a greater scale outside of Ely, we also have representation with the St. Louis County Historical Society. I'm on the board of directors for that. I'm also on the board of directors for the Minnesota Alliance of Local History Museums, which is an organization that supports small and local history organizations throughout the state. And I work on the advocacy team for that board. So we are trying to create resources for leaders within those small organizations to fight for themselves, to support themselves, to ask for money, talk to their elected leaders. You know, how do you do those things? And we're there to help. I'm also on the board for a more amount of time of the Minnesota Alliance for Heritage Response. And so that's where the emergency planning and disaster response part of what I do comes in. And we're a member of the Small Museum Association. So the Small Museum Association is more of an East Coast organization, but I have gone to those conferences to represent our state. I think I'm the only one that was there last year and maybe one or two from the year before, but presenting sessions and talking about the things that we do here in Minnesota and or Ely at the Dorothy Molter Museum. And then, is anybody familiar with the Great River Energy Minnesota Paddling Opener that's coming this weekend? Riley nodded said back there. So this is an event. It started a couple of years ago, put on by some of the folks that did the Mississippi Speed Race, breaking the record several years ago. But basically, it's a weekend event to celebrate paddling in Minnesota. And it features a series of races along the Mississippi River and the Crow River. And so last year they approached the museum and asked if we would want to be a sponsor, and they have a special root beer float family race that is for the museum. And so that's coming up this weekend. So I'll be going down to the cities. For Sunday, they have a post paddle party at an Anoka Riverside Park with live music and food trucks. And I will be handing out cold root beer, of course. So this is kind of a sampling of some of the random things maybe that I and the museum are involved in. But I think a lot of people expressed that they're interested in History Happy Hour, which I think is the star of the show here, which I'm really happy about. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about what this is and how it came to be, the origin story of this. And so how many of you have been to one History Happy Hour? Okay, so I'll go deep. So History Happy Hour is I'm giving away all my secrets. History Happy Hour was kind of an idea, and the basic details of it, it's a 30-minute history program that focuses on local history. When I say this, that does not mean I am a local history expert. History Happy Hour is designed to provide kind of a surface scratch of the topic with some wide-ranging facts, narrowing down to how it connects locally, and then hopefully inspiring folks that go there to dig deeper and learn more. So the origin story of this started at a MALM conference. So that's the Minnesota Alliance of Local History. Before COVID, okay, it's just gonna go, that's fine. And it was over in Grand Forks. Part of the schedule of our activities for the conference was, hey, there's a History Happy Hour at Junkyard Brewing, and you can go and check this out. And I had heard about History Happy Hours. It's a nationwide thing. It's not probably everywhere in the world. Some places actually trademarked it, like History on Tap or History in a Pint. So you have to be careful. Okay. I think it's just a setting on my program to automatically go clearly. But so I was like, this would be so cool in Ely. We have a brewery. We have people that like to drink beer. We have people that really like history. I really want to do this, but I don't know that I can do it by myself. And it just seemed like a really big beast to tackle. And so there was a lot of fear and uncertainty. And I started thinking about it quite a bit. COVID came and went, and things started to ramp up at the museum again. And I thought, you know, this would be a really cool thing to do in the off season. I would have time. And so I started looking at different topics to do, and that's fine. We'll go with the flow. You can give me 3 stars on my review after this if this is bothering you. What am I doing? Oh. So here we go. There we go. Okay. So here we are. I made a choice. I consulted with a few other folks and I said, you know what? It's now or never. I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. So I went to the Boathouse and I talked to Brian. I said, I have this idea. I don't know if it's going to work. I think there would be interest. And will you let me have a monthly program in your bar? And he said, well, sure, but you're responsible for all the marketing and getting people to come here. And I thought, okay, I know how to use social media. So of course I experienced more fear and uncertainty and a lot of anxiety. And it turns out my instinct was right. People really wanted to learn about local history, and the first program had a lot of people. And I was super excited, and it gave me a little bit more confidence. And I just felt like, okay, this is going to work for now. We'll see how it goes, if it's just a one-hit wonder, or, you know, we keep going and see how long we can go for. How many topics could there possibly be? So since then, in November of 2023, these are all the programs that I've done. And most of them are on online, available to watch or listen to. And I'll show that a little bit later. But I started with, of course, focusing on the boathouse as a building. That, okay, well, this is perfect. We're gonna, you know, give the boathouse a little bit of a spotlight. And it had a really cool history. And then as I went on, I kind of was like, oh, how do you pick a topic? I don't know. What do people want to hear about? So honestly, my process was pretty basic. So topic selection was at first a lot of, what do I want to learn about? Because I'm doing all this work. I want to see what things are out there for me. And so my process has evolved over the last 3 seasons, and it's been refined a little bit, but I still struggle with time management because there's a lot of information out there available locally. And so what I do, once I select a topic, is I start as far back in history as I can possibly go. I even went back to the birth of the universe in one program, but then I jumped forward like 4 billion years. But I go back as far as I can possibly go to start with this big picture view of the topic to give context. So where did this topic, you know, start? So when I did the Train Depot, the Trails to Rails program, I went back to, you know, ancient people on this continent and how they traveled around and what tools they used and what kind of shoes did they have. And as they changed their methods from using domestic canines up to equines to the wheel, you know, and kind of went through that process. So you can imagine the amount of information that might be available for that. And I build the story. So I start way, way, way far back. And then I get real close to where it's actually connected either to Ely itself or the area within and around Ely. And it's literally a story. I write a story in my voice in the way that I want it to sound. And I have to narrow down a lot. I have to trim a lot of fat in these stories. And I use a script because there's just so much detail. It's hard to remember every cool little detail in a 30-minute program when I don't have a lot of time to rehearse and practice this when I have one once a month in the winter season. And so I actually write a script for myself and try to make sure that I'm getting all those little details and I stay on track. Because if I don't have it, I will go wildly off on tangents on some cool issues. And then I start talking too long and get really long-winded. And then once I come up with a story that I like the way it sounds and I've got some humor in there. I like throwing puns in. Then I build out the visuals. So the whole time I'm trying to find visuals to include, and often we'll find really neat imagery or art related to the topic. And so I'll save them and then, make sure I'm crediting the right source of the whatever visual I'm using. And then when I write the story, then I have an idea, okay, I'm going to use this visual on this slide and this visual over here. And then I look for more when I need it. And then I practice. So I do practice it at least twice in my office by myself. And I have a timer to make sure that I stay on track. And if I go over, then I go back and I edit that script a little bit more. And in some cases, I have to cut out some really cool stories or tidbits of information that I'm upset about for 30 seconds. And then I go back, and once that's complete, then I build the playlist. And so I started that just this last season, and the end of the last season, of looking for songs that represent the topic that I'm going to be talking about from all across history, from all across different cultures. If it's available on Apple Music or Spotify, I will try to find it. And so I curate a playlist for every program. That is another really fun part of doing this program. And you find a lot of really cool artists out there by doing something like that. And so when I'm researching, the different resources I use are 99% publicly accessible. These are our local resources. So the Ely Winton Historical Society, which has been incredibly generous with their time, mostly volunteer-led time, and allowing me access into their archives and their object collections and photo collections. Minnesota Historical Society has a lot of their collection items and stories about those items online. So very easy to search. They also have a lot of oral histories online. And if you're not aware, the Minnesota Historical Society it has different collections. Like they have an Ely Winton collection. And so oral histories from the Ely Winton Historical Society are on the Minnesota Historical Society's website. So I can get firsthand accounts of some topics without having to either track down that person or if that person has already passed. So wonderful online resources for history. Minnesota Digital Library is another resource, mostly for imagery. And they have a collection of Dorothy Molter Museum photographs, Ely Winton, all different small historical societies or large museums around the state of Minnesota are represented in Minnesota Digital Library. I also work with various organizations. So, if I'm going to be talking about government in Ely, I might go and talk to a city councilor. When I did the Ely water supply or water systems, I went and I talked to Harold at the city. So using local individuals and organizations has been very helpful. And then newspaper archives. So the Ely Miner, tons of pages of the Ely Miner from right about when Ely was founded. So in the 1880s, 1890s, when people first started coming into the area, there are newspaper articles that are available online if you figure out how to navigate the sites that are there. And then secondary sources. So, an article that had previously been written about the topic that I'm looking at, or an interview by somebody who is related to the person who was directly impacted. I occasionally will do actual interviews with people in town, but I tend to not do that for the main reason is that I don't want the person I've interviewed to be offended if I can't include the information they provided because I've had to trim out information to meet 30 minutes of a program. So I just want to be really mindful of the person's time that they're giving me to share their personal history. And if I can't include that, it feels like I'm robbing them of their time, even though they enjoy talking about it and sharing information. So I don't often do personal interviews for that reason. There's just so much information, it's hard to share everything. But like I said, all of the current history happy hours, except for the last two, because I've been so busy with spring and training staff that I haven't had time to sit and record them. But they're posted. So Dorothy Molter Museum has a YouTube channel, and within that channel, we have a history happy hour playlist. So from the early season in 2023 up until March, they're all posted online. You will, if you start at the beginning, you will definitely see a quality improvement as you go, because I was flying by the seat of my pants doing this. And now I feel like I have come to a more refined process. But this time of the year, I have to record them at home because we are open every day. And I have staff that have a lot of questions yet because it's the first few weeks of being open for the season. This is probably one of the favorite parts of my job. And I'm really thankful that the Boathouse allows me to do it. This program wouldn't be possible with support from other organizations and businesses in town. Boundary Waters Connect was one of the early supporters of it, the Ely Folk School. Of course, the Boathouse Brewpub, Ely Winton Historical Society, the Heritage Preservation Commission has also done a lot of work finding resources or doing a little bit of legwork on certain topics. Both the Ely Echo and the Timber Jay put ads for this program in their paper for free. There's no budget. This is just me doing something because I really like doing it, and it turned out it was popular. And then the Ely Trivia will oftentimes put a question in their incredibly difficult trivia questions that are related to History Happy Hour in some way. And so there's just so much support for this program that it wouldn't be done. And I've actually been approached by a couple of people now that are interested in sponsoring in some way for next season. So it continues to grow. As far as I know, the Boathouse still wants to do it, which doesn't surprise me because they benefit quite a bit from this program. And they very quickly realized they need to staff more people upstairs during the program. The May program was on float planes and kind of the aviation history of the area. And we had 124 people there, which is the most we've ever had. Planes are cool though, planes and trains. Yeah, those are topics that a lot of people really enjoy. So, so I feel very fortunate to be able to continue doing this program. I was asked earlier how much time I spend on each program. And it really depends on the topic and the amount of information readily available. But on average, it's a minimum of 8 hours of my time. But it often is more because I fall down rabbit holes on topics that are just so fascinating. And I would never know this information without doing this program. And so, you know, 2 full days of work is probably fair for me to develop one program. But then I'm often doing my playlist at home. You know, I'm in the kitchen washing dishes. I'm like, ooh, this would be a good song. So it's kind of become integrated into my professional and personal life at the same time. But I would be remiss, and you saw the sneak preview, if I didn't share that there are some challenges currently, both to continuing a program like History Happy Hour, but the museum in general specifically, because that is my employer, and they pay my time to do this program. And some of the big threats I've highlighted here, and one of the biggest ones is threats to historic preservation and integrity. And, you know, my job at the museum is apolitical. We are not an activism or advocacy organization outside of the scope of our mission. But we are starting to feel the trickle-down effect of the removal of certain protections for historic organizations, especially the funding for arts and culture and humanities. And so we're starting to feel the crunch. And in addition to that, budget cuts that affect states in terms of allocated funding also trickle down to organizations like St. Louis County Historical Society, which gets a huge amount of funding from St. Louis County. When the state of Minnesota gets funding cut for whatever reason, then the funding to individual counties gets cut. And then the county has to determine, what's more important, you know, resources and social services for families and children, or a historical society? So I'm not trying to pit one against the other, but that's the reality of extreme budget cuts, is that the businesses, the organizations that are viewed as maybe not essential are the ones that lose the funding first and lose donations. Because if you, I'm not going to ask you specifically, but you know, are you going to feed a hungry child, or are you going to pay a museum to have 3 staff instead of 2 staff? I mean, most of us are probably going to feed the child. I won't make assumptions, but that's kind of the situation that we're in terms of historical organizations. There's also issues with tariffs and fuel surcharges. Last year, the Dorothy Molter Museum experienced an 8% increase in root beer production costs due directly to tariffs. And even though all of our packaging and our root beer is brewed in the United States, there are shortages of raw materials. So there are some ingredients that root beer flavoring needs that are not created in North America. So every aspect of our root beer production was affected by tariffs, because some of those raw materials have to be sourced outside of North America, and the demand for domestic product got higher because of the tariffs. And so the supplies were hard to keep up with. And we're now experiencing another increase on top of that with fuel surcharges. And so just today, our root beer flavoring, I got an email that we're going to have a 5% increase per gallon of root beer flavoring because of the increased cost of transport and the difficulty in getting raw materials. And of course, the big question mark is, how will all of this affect tourism this summer and into the future? And we are a tourist-based organization. As much as we are a historical organization, first and foremost, we rely on visitation to survive. So what will this look like at the end of the season, and how will it affect the museum moving forward? So these are all very real challenges that might give me a little bit more anxiety than usual, but there are some positive things. So I want to end on a more positive note. One is that we have recently launched an interactive map to find Dorothy's root beer. So it's an easy Google map, but we curated it with all of the current resellers of Dorothy's Isle of Pines root beer. And so the majority of them are in northern Minnesota and Wisconsin, but there are some outliers in southern Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Kansas City, Missouri. Let me know if you're traveling that way. That hopefully will promote the root beer product, which is our biggest and most impactful vehicle to spread the mission of the museum and Dorothy's story, so that our distributors need more from us, which then in turn helps our bottom line. And then we have our summer open houses coming up. So again, the first one is June 28th. It's called Dorothy Day. It's just a day to celebrate Dorothy's legacy and bring awareness to her story. July is July 26th. It's during the Blueberry Arts and Crafts Festival, again on a Sunday, and it's called Donuts at Dorothy's. And we have donut-like pastries from Brainstorm Bakery, who is a business member, and refreshments and sale for Blueberry Festival. And then in August, we do our Supporter Appreciation Day. So August 23rd, again, another Sunday, free all day with special treats, refreshments, and activities, just to say thank you to the folks, especially in our community, that support the museum, but also folks that are here as visitors that want to learn more about Dorothy. So all of these are, again, free. But I wanted to intentionally save time for questions and make sure that I didn't get too long-winded. But here's my contact information if you need to get in touch with me, or you have more questions after today, or you have a great idea, please let me know.
We have the questions, so I'm going to start here.
I have data questions. How many visitors does the museum have every year?
So we have reached 7,000 visitors. That was 2 summers ago, was our biggest year with just over 7,000. Average is about 6,000.
How much root beer do you sell a year?
A lot. Hundreds of thousands of bottles of root beer.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to really applaud you, Jess. Like, I think the History Happy Hour program and you proceeding based on your personal interests, but like following your understanding of what the community had a thirst for is really cool. And you have been such a role model in being collaborative. Like those 2 slides where you're talking about the local efforts that you're a part of and the broader associations that you participate in. It's really profound and it has a lot of benefit and it's a model of leadership for the rest of us to follow.
Thank you.
I also agree that research is deeply exciting, just in general. We have other questions.
And while Jess is walking back there, I'll just share that I intentionally don't want to do Dorothy Molter as a History Happy Hour topic. It's just, the History Happy Hour is very separate from the museum. And it's important to me that that is separate because I think people want something that they can do that's informal. There's no expectation, you know, and it's free, but also informative. So.
Hey there, as a teacher, I'm curious if you ever decided on a topic, built your whole presentation, and then realized it was actually 2 and split it and done it as 2.
Yes, probably every single one. It's just, there's so much information. And I think one of those, an example of that would be the Women's Firsts program I did, not this past March, but the March before, where it was all about women's history because it's Women's History Month. And I was trying to highlight things that women in Ely and the surrounding area did. And then, you know, you've got all these angles like, well, there's firsts in women's sports, there's firsts in government, there's firsts in, you know, who lived here. And so that one was a hard one to pick and choose who's going to get highlighted in a program.
I'd like to help you shorten the pick and choose process, make the thing 45 minutes long. I will still be there, I will still eating. The second beer is really
nice. Thank you. I have thought about that. And really it's up to the Boathouse of how they want to do it. And the challenge with that specifically is that they, in the winters, they have open mic night on the same evening that starts at 6 o'clock. Well, I have been ruminating on the idea of switching the day and the time only because the third week often conflicts with some things that I have going on, like a conference. And so I honestly was thinking about if they'd let me do it on the second week, because that fits Ely Winter Festival. It helps with holiday scheduling in November, December, my conference schedule in April. So there are conversations that are probably going to happen before next year.
I think people will show up no matter what it is.
Sorry, it's me again. But I have lots of dreams for you. And one of them is that this could be a published book, like a coffee table book. So I'm just saying that on for everyone else to hear me say it. And then as we were talking, I also thought like, it's just really cool. I know you kind of gave the caveat like, oh, you're not a historian, but it's actually even cooler that you're not. And I wonder if you've ever thought about teaching something like an Ely folk school class, like teaching your process to a group of students who then go on their, like have to make their own presentation.
I have not thought about that.
And then we could all listen to those presentations too.
Oh, that'd be fun. I have not thought about that, but I love that idea, and thank you for coming up with it. One of the things that I also think is really important that, so years ago, I was also an adjunct instructor at Vermilion. And, you know, we had to work through, what does critical thinking mean? And when you are researching for, and we were doing natural resources, so it was a little different. But how do you determine what sources are accurate? What sources are, you know, credible and have integrity to them? And so that's another part of doing this program, is that there's so much slop out there on the internet now. You know, everybody has a blog, everybody likes to talk about what they want to talk about. So filtering through a lot of that is part of the process too, and it's time consuming. And so I think that'd be a fun idea, because young people, I think, could benefit from that too. Well, adults also, I think, but people were kids.
Yeah, a little piece of history that I came across and helped me clean out a friend's house. His mother was the president of the auxiliary for the Legion,
Mhm.
and we showed that the grove of trees that had been planted at the end of World War II with all the soldiers that were killed in World War II.
Mhm.
So it's something that's been
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, Joseph Roseman led the effort and had Ely Elementary School children help plant the tree. A really cool history. Mhm.
Other questions? Jump in.
Because I always have questions. Two things, Dorothy Molter question, are you still getting additional donations or memorabilia that comes in about Dorothy or for Dorothy Molter from folks?
Yes.
Okay, because I know you have a very large collection already to
Mhm.
work through. But at Firefly Vintage, we often come across historical things that we want to know what to do with.
Mhm.
Should we know?
Yeah.
The other one is a half-fledged question about the new music venue that we have coming at the depot. I would like to resurrect Dorothy Molter, the musical, the Root Beer Lady, the musical, on a regular basis throughout the summer.
Yeah.
As an outdoor musical. I think that would be wonderful. So
Yeah.
if anyone else is interested in helping work on that, please look me up. Barb Gary is kind of controlling that, but we'll work on that.
He actually gifted all of the set stuff and the rights to do it to the museum.
Good to see.
So if you want to take that on, I am happy to help you.
What an exciting moment. We're getting the musical back. Other questions?
While she's walking back there, the History Theater of St. Paul had a one-act, one-woman play called The Root Beer Lady, different than the musical. And Kim Schultz, who is the playwright and actor, discovered Dorothy up here at Tofty Lake Center during an artist residency, saw the Root Beer Lady book, was inspired, started writing the script. I worked with her on technical edits, and then the History Theater produced it. It's going to have its third run in July. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It's another wonderful production of Dorothy's life and her impact on others.
Hard to see with the lights on, but I wanted to mention for those that might not have noticed, the background on all your slides is a black and red flag.
Yes, it is. I like those little details.
Do we have any more questions? While I'm walking there, I also was wondering, sort of similarly to Lacey's idea of a folk school class, have you thought about collaborating with teachers at the school to do a project similar to History Happy Hour school as well?
I have not. I have reached out to schools. So we offer free admission and free programs to all the area schools. So either I can go to them or one of our staff can go to them, or they can come to us for free. Basically within a 40-mile radius, we'll do that. Beyond that, we ask for mileage reimbursement, but it's, the hard part is integrating into an existing teacher's curriculum. And that's across the board. Anybody trying to get in the classroom, it's really challenging. So about every year I send an email out, like, just a reminder, free stuff, here to help, let me know. Mhm.
You have the playlist of previous happy hours. If you were to give, like 3 of them that someone who's never seen any of them should go look up now, what 3 would you pick?
Ah. I really got a kick out of the float plane playlist. There's a lot of songs about planes. I also really liked last year's women's history playlist. There's some songs from way back, early recordings at, you know, pre-1920 that I think were really cool. And maybe the Northwoods Monsters, because I love Halloween and spooky songs are kind of fun, especially spooky season. Mhm.
Any last questions? As always, you're welcome to come up and chat with Jess for a few minutes afterwards. Thank you so much, Jess. And we will all see you at History Happy Hour in the fall and at the Dorothy Molter Museum of 3 days throughout the summer.
Or you can pay.